Hello, everyone. Welcome to Engineers Team 9892 Coding Bootcamp for FTC. This is a new series we'll be starting that will be split into three parts depending on the difficulty: beginner, intermediate, and difficult. So, if you understand one topic, you can feel free to move on to the next topic. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the terminology that we're going to be using throughout all of our code. And one more thing, if you have any questions on what is happening, make sure to check the description. There will be a whole notes manual there, and there will also be a template of the project that I'm using in a GitHub. So feel free to check it out. But before we get into that, we have to discuss some of the hardware stuff. So in this video, I have three main hardware sections that we have to talk about. This right here is the driver hub. This right here is a control hub. And this right here is a expansion hub. The driver hub I'll go back to in a minute. And then the control hub, just for quick explanation, is where we'll be sending our code to. This is kind of like the brain of the robot here, and how our code on the robot is able to talk or able to function consistently. And then this is basically connected to your control hub and also is able to talk with the control hub and actually have, let's say you have motors here that they tell the motors to move using this one instead of this one. The control hub talks to the expansion hub, and the driver hub, this one here, talks to the control hub. But anyway, let's get back to this. So again, what you're going to have to do to get a code working is you're going to have to go to FTC Robot Controller, Java, and external samples. You see how many files there are here. Do not worry about that right now. All you're going to do is you're going to double click or right click. You're going to copy this file, and you're going to bring it over to your org.firstinspire.ftc.teamcode. You might have to open this up a couple times. And you're going to paste it in there. And what I'm going to call this file is I'm going to call it tutorial. Make it easy because, again, this is a tutorial series, so it's not too complicated. Don't worry about the message. You're not going to see it if you're just starting, so do not worry about that. And what I want everyone to do is Control-A, delete. Just so there's nothing on the file, and we're just starting with a clean slate. Okay. The first thing we need to talk about is package. Package is basically where the file is located. And the best way to tell where it's located, you see this file here, it says org.firstinspire.ftc.teamcode. That is exactly where this file is located. So if I were to type org.firstinspire.ftc.teamcode, instead of a period, I put a semicolon. This is where your file is going to be called from, and this is from the control hub. This is where it's going to know where the file is at. So anyway, next thing we need to talk about is the import statements that we're going to have to put. Imports are basically this individual file, the tutorial file that we created, is going to try to call actions from other files or get additional information that this file doesn't currently have. So for instance, in this scenario, we would type in com.qualcomm.robotcore.eventloop.opmode. Let's just use teleop right now and semicolon. And we're going to do two more times, import.com.qualcomm. But our last thing here, the teleop, is going to be different. It's going to be turned into autonomous. And import com.qualcomm.robotcore.eventloop.opmode.linear opmode is the last import statement we're going to be adding for this example. And all the imports are doing is just pulling information from a separate file and using it in this example here. Now, we're going to talk about the difference between autonomous and teleop here shortly. So teleop, if we go back to our images here, teleop is where the file is going to locate in the driver hub. So teleop and autonomous anyway. So teleop is going to be on the right-hand side. Or sorry, the left-hand side is teleop. This arrow right here, if you click on the arrow on the driver hub, it will show a list of programs. One of the programs that it will be listed is the current one that we're doing now, but we have to send it to the control hub in order for the driver hub to see that we sent the code as well. This right arrow is for autonomous, and that's how we'll be setting our autonomous code. Note that they can technically be, any file can be autonomous or teleop, but typically we like to keep them separate so it's a little more organized. This init button is kind of like initializing your code. So you'll have stuff before, and we'll see in a minute that you have stuff before your actual code is operating. And this is just battery level, driver station battery level, stuff like that. And we'll get back into that in a second. But for right now, this is teleop, and then autonomous. Here, and you see how this lights up? Like this turns from gray to like an orange and white color and kind of yellow. That's how you know that import statement is being used. So, but for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to use teleop. We're going to use teleop for this example, and underneath, after this, you're going to put parentheses, name equals, not parentheses, quotation marks, tutorial, and then after this quotation mark right here, and before the parenthesis, you're putting a comma, and then you're typing group, all lowercase, equals, quotation mark, linear op mode. Spelled like that. And then after this, you're putting a curly bracket, like this, and you're going to put it down. Actually, no, you're not. That's a lie. I skipped a little bit ahead. Underneath this, we're going to talk about public class. Public class tutorial extends linear op mode. Curly bracket, and underneath. Don't worry about this being an error right now. As you build the code, we'll get less and less errors, and this will just be functional. So don't worry about this right now. This is not a big deal. Because once we build the code, there should be no errors remaining, and we should be able to just run it and just see what it looks like. But yeah, what is a public class, and what does it mean by extending? A public class is basically, a class is all your code that is executable, or in other words, all your code that is going to be used for the robot. So, and if I type all this stuff under here, that's not what I meant to do, but like all this stuff here, like if this was actual code, this would be operational. This would be what would be considered under a class, is all the executable code that there is. There's something that we'll be talking about later known as methods or functions, depending on what coding background you have, where basically it is a mini class, is what I like to call it. It's basically a smaller group of code that is executable, that is smaller than a class. It's kind of how I see it. But now we're going to type in @override. To be perfectly honest, I do not know what this means. I just know that it's used for all your methods and functions. Don't ask me what it does. I cannot explain it to you. There's something that I'll link in the description of this video where it goes more in depth about like the coding of FTC, and it makes things a lot easier to understand in case I don't explain it well. So @override, and then you're going to type in public void run op mode. Run op mode. Parentheses and curly bracket. So notice now we have 0 errors after adding this line of code. And okay, what does public void mean? Okay, public being that it's visible by other classes. So other classes, like if there's another file and I typed in public void, it can technically see this one, but it can't use it because it doesn't have a static variable in there. Static means that other files can use it. And then void means that it does not have to return a numerical value. So with a lot of our code, like if you just do like public run op mode, it would ask us to give us like a value of like 2 or something, like some random numerical value, so it could be used in a different part of the code. When you set it to void, it basically is asking, I don't really care what the value you give me is, as long as you have a valid code written inside of it. And again, run op mode means that when the op mode is running, you will be like executing this line of code specifically. So let's go more specifically. So now we're going to be talking about telemetry. What is telemetry and what does it do? So telemetry, add data, quote, status, and after the quotation mark, another quotation, and initial. So what is this and why is this important? So telemetry.addData is specifically for the drivers to see the information. So if we go back to here, this is talking about all the information that will give you, and you'll see like how, don't worry about this, but basically in this area, after you hit initialize and play, you'll see a play button. If you hit play or initialize, you'll see the status here, and it will basically say init underneath. Once you hit play though, what we want to do, is we want to go back here, and in order for this to pop up, we need to say, I'm just going to cut this part out. Starting now. So for this section, we added telemetry.addData, status, and init. And the reason why we do it is for this here to show us the information that we want from the robot. So it would basically say status and then initialize or init underneath. But in order for this to pop up, we need to add telemetry.update. And you see here has the 2 parentheses, and then we add semicolon underneath. So this would be when you press init, this will show in the telemetry area. Now we need to add a wait for start. And basically what this is this is the initialize phase. It's waiting for the thing to start. And then after this, it means I have pressed play. So now all we're going to do is while parentheses op mode is active, curly bracket, curly bracket. You're going to enter beneath these two, and you're going to type in telemetry.addData, quotation marks, and this is what I did, but I did hello, and I did my name is, and then you type in whatever your name is here, and then you're putting a semicolon at the end of this. And underneath it, you're doing the same thing as up above, telemetry.update, semicolon. So this would be your code in a nutshell for the basic terminology that I was giving you. So, okay, let's explain everything. So right here is your while op mode is active, right? So, okay, what's a while statement? While statement is something that is basically saying, hey, I am currently running, so if I'm running, do this. So while the op mode is active or running, give this information to the telemetry. While it's in the initialize stage, give this information to the telemetry. And you'll see this change once you go to your driver control and you hit initialize play, and you'll see that information change over here in this right box. Something else you have to do in order to send it to the in order to have this information pop up in the driver hub, is you have to send this code, and you'll see here where the no devices are. You have to send it to the control hub here with a USB-C cord connected to your computer. And basically you'll hit, instead of here where it says no devices, it'll say like drive or control hub, whatever after it. And then you can hit play and it will run the code and it will send it over. Basically it goes Gradle building, initialized, and importing code. And once the code is finalized importing, you'll see it on the bottom right of your screen. I can't really do the example right now because I don't have the robot with me. But you'll see it like, oh, the code is finished sending. And then you can unplug the USB-C cord, and then you can see in your driver hub that this is like this program will be seen because it's under teleop, and you can run it, and this is what will pop up. Okay, some other stuff we have to talk about. Doubles. The double thingy, I'm going to call it test equals 0. Okay, actually, it's 0.33. Okay. So what's a double? A double is a number that can be any number. But it has to be put into a variable. So you see here how my variable would be test, right? So if I were to put this here, instead of my name is, so I put test, it would just show the number 0.33. Actually, no, it would be this. Sorry, hold on. It'd be test. Right, yeah. So instead of in the quotes, it would just be 0.33 in the telemetry slot. That's that. That's what a double is. A integer or a int. Test2. I'm gonna call it test2. Just make it easy. Has to be a whole number, so it cannot be like 4.23, because otherwise you'll have a whole issue. You see how this shows like a red now? We can't have that. So it has to be any whole number, and typically we don't use integers, we use doubles more often, but it is a good thing to know in the back of your mind. Like, oh, hey, I can use an integer for 3, or it has to be a double for 2.5. It is good to note that. Some other things we have to talk about are like if-else statements. So if blank and blank, well, I don't really have a great example of this because I don't have other stuff, but basically an if statement is like if x equals true, and I'm just saying like basic coding logic, but like if x is true, do this. Okay, that's great, but what happens if it doesn't, right? It's like, oh, if x is true, do this. Okay, well, the problem is I have nothing for if it doesn't do that, so I have to write an else statement for if x equal, or if anything else. And note, this is just red. I'm not actually writing this as code, but I'm just trying to get you guys the basic understanding. Anything but x equal true, then do this. Right? That would be that. There's one more thing that we also have to know is a else if statement. Else if. Basically what this is if you already have an if statement before it, if statement before it, and it has all the code there, and then there's one more action that it could do besides this if statement that is not nothing, then you put an else if statement. Then you would put an else. This is kind of the order. So if you have if one thing happens, if another thing happens, and anything else, just do this action. So that's kind of how those statements work. And I think that's everything that I want to talk about in this episode, other than Booleans. Booleans is one more thing that we do have to talk about. Boolean is a true or false statement. So if I were to type Boolean test again equals true, or I think it's true like this. Boolean.true. That's how you would write it. And this just basically tells if like test is true. So it translates to test being true, and we can move on from there. But with that will be the end of this video. There will be more videos in the future as the season goes on, where we'll be creating more complex versions of what our code should be looking like. But for right now, this is the basic terminology that a FTC programmer does have to understand on how this operates. And with that, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.